Hello, and a big warm welcome to the Guardian Doula's Diary podcast. My name is Angela Deuce, or Angie. I'm your host and the founder of Guardian Doula. I'm a certified birth and postpartum doula and childbirth educator based on Sydney's Northern Beaches and serving women and their families all throughout Sydney. This podcast is an honest collection of the stories and experiences of birthing women and the professionals that support them to empower, equip, and inspire us all. Let's get into it. Do you want to do a bit of an overview of who you are and your whole, what you're about, so that anyone listening who hasn't heard of you and who doesn't know what the wonderful birth circle is can have a bit of a...
Yes, I'd be happy to. So my name is Sidery. I am a mother of two. I have a 6.5-year-old, actually very close to almost 7-year-old daughter, Bobby, and my son Felix is 4 and a little bit. And I'm also a midwife, so I'm working at Northern Beaches Hospital at the moment in their MAPS program, which is continuity for the pregnancy, so all the antenatal appointments, and then I do the postnatal home visits, but I'm not working in birthing at the moment. So, yeah, and then on the side I have a childbirth education business, so which is obviously like labour, birth preparation for expectant parents, and then it differs in that we talk about parenting more than just the first kind of hours after birth. So we talk about how to nurture or foster secure attachment with your baby. We talk about how to get sleep in those early days, or how to manage on not much sleep.
Yes, love it.
Yeah, just infant brain development and postpartum sexuality, mood disorders. Yeah, lots of different things. So it is a one-day workshop, but it is jam-packed.
Love it. So good. I always appreciate when childbirth education courses do focus on that postpartum period and then even into parenthood, because so many of them don't. And I think people forget, I see this all the time with my clients when we're doing our birth preparation. I think people forget that there is quite literally life after birth. That's how it works.
Yeah, you can, particularly when it's your first, you can understand it because you're thinking, okay, I've got Mount Everest to climb.
Yeah.
And I have no idea what it's going to look like at the top, because it kind of is a bit abstract and, difficult to get your head around. But when you speak to women after they've had a baby, they're like, oh my God, I can't believe nobody told me about this. I can't believe no one was, how come everyone's talking about it? And it's all this preparation about getting the baby out, and then maybe, the first couple of hours after, it'll talk about how to swaddle your baby and how to bath your baby. And it's like, how is that helpful doing it on a plastic immobile doll 6 weeks before you're going to be doing it on a real baby?
Yeah, it's so true, because it's totally different, isn't it? When you are changing a real baby's nappy, that baby might pee on you, that baby might be crying, which adds stress, and then you forget everything and you're like, oh. So it's so good, so it's good.
Also you're going to learn it on the job anyway. No one's going to get hurt or die if you don't know how to swaddle your baby. Some babies hate being swaddled anyway.
Yeah, it's true. It's so true. Whereas, you might die if you haven't prepared for the sleep deprivation and the, obviously you're not going to, but you know what I mean. It's. I think the consequences are a lot harder to deal with. If you just forget how to change a nappy and the baby wheezes everywhere, it's like, oh well, you're doing laundry anyway. It's another thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally. It's more washing. But if you haven't prepared for the sleep deprivation, or you don't know what's normal and what's not normal, and then you're in this state of perpetual anxiety postpartum, that's so much worse. So yes, that's amazing, Abby. Love that. And I always love, I feel like it's so beautiful I mean, living on the Northern Beaches, I kind of actually am really lucky. I live on the border of the Northern Beaches in the North Shore. So I feel like I'm actually halfway to everywhere. But definitely a lot of the women that I support give birth at Northern Beaches Hospital. And so I always love and am so grateful for having relationships with midwives like you who work there and being able to call you up all the time and be like, oh, Abby, what about this? Like, you know, what do you think about this situation? Like if there's ever something that's going on with my clients that isn't super black and white, or, you know, they might kind of sit in the middle of two policies. I'm like, what can we do here? Like, what do you think? What are their options? It's so good having those relationships and those connections. I feel like the women really benefit from that. And it's so nice to have that collaboration with you guys. So I love it. I'm always so grateful for that.
And always happy to help. Absolutely.
You are the best. I feel like a really cool direction for this episode, which I know we kind of spoke about it a little bit before we started recording, could be to focus on how doulas and midwives work together and how our roles differ. And then maybe just focusing a little bit on unpacking some of the misconceptions that women can have around what that looks like. And like, I think, some of the big ones that I hear about quite often are like, oh, why do you need a doula, or why do you need a midwife if you have, like, you know, why do you need both? If you've got one, you don't necessarily need the other, which of course is totally untrue because our roles are so different. So maybe we can talk about that a little bit. And then I think it would also be cool to almost like debunk the idea that hiring a doula is going to make your midwife think that you don't trust them or that you don't like them, or because I think women worry about that too. Like I hear that all the time where women are like, oh, I'm kind of nervous to tell my midwife that I've hired you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's so sad. You don't need to feel like that at all. Like midwives love it when you hire a doula. Like I have a friend who was telling me the other day, she was like, it's so annoying when women come in to give birth and they've put nothing in place and they've done no preparation and they don't have a birth plan and they haven't hired a doula. Like she was like, if anything, I can't stand that because I want women to have a great birth. Like I love it when they, so it'd be good to talk about that and kind of take the, almost like the fear out of it, you know?
For sure. I mean, I think traditionally, you know, humans have always birthed very socially. There are some cultures where women have done it in isolation, but particularly in our kind of culture, you know, there was the gossips. So like all the local women would come together and nurture the woman. They would be cooking for her and singing to her and massaging and touching and helping. And, you know, I mean, that's over the last 150 years that has definitely dissipated and disappeared and barely even exists anymore, which is so sad. You know, usually the first time a woman is hearing a woman in labour or, you know, kind of experiencing labour, it's usually herself for the first time, which, you know, so sad, which I think is where a lot of the fear comes from. But I think, you know, having a doula, particularly if you're birthing in hospital, because even if you have MGP, there is still a chance that you're not going to know who is caring for you when you're in labour, or it might be, you know, longer than 12 hours. So there could be, you know, a change of face during your labour. And we know what the incredible benefits are of continuity of care and having a familiar face in the birth space. I mean, over at the Royal Hospital for Women, they do have a early first stage of labour assessment at home policy where the midwife can come and see you at home, but I don't believe Northern Beaches does. So if your labour is going on for hours and hours, days, having someone come and be with you at home, because the hospital doesn't respect the first stage of labour. They're like, meh, you know, you do that at home, you don't need to be monitored, you don't need anything, you just, you know, you do that at home and you come in once you're about to have a baby. But it can be really, really challenging and long and difficult and scary sometimes if you're not prepared. And for your partner to be the sole person in that role is a huge undertaking, because it's the two people that he or she loves the most in the world, and then just being like, oh, cool, you're doing a really good job, you've got this, without any kind of, knowledge of what is normal and what's not. And when your partner is saying, I can't do this anymore, it's too painful, to just nod and say, you're doing such a good job, here's another sip of water, can be really confronting, and so just having that extra level of support is amazing. And then, obviously once you're actually in hospital, doulas and midwives working together is just so important, because then, doulas don't have a union or have any kind of, you're not bound by these heavy kind of policies and legalities. So you can be, you can go off and have a snooze and come back and do 24 hours. Not that I would recommend you do that, but it is that continuous support. And midwives and doulas being able to work together so that the woman is fully supported, that's what it's all about. I mean, part of me is like, I think I should just go back to being a doula. But no, I don't.
Yes, we should have mentioned that you was that before you were finished your midwifery? You were a doula, right? I feel like that's really cool to mention that and to.
Yeah.
Do you want to share a little bit about your journey with all of that?
Yeah. So my mum has been a home birth midwife my entire existence. She did midi just before she conceived me, and was working in the hospital. And then I think during my pregnancy she met an amazing midwife called Shay Caplice, and my mum was like, my gosh.
While she was pregnant with you, when you say during your pregnancy?
Or maybe just before she conceived me, I think.
Okay.
My parents conceived me, I should say. She met this midwife that just did things totally differently. Had the woman upright and moving, and rather than lying on her back with stirrups and forceps and everything. And my mum was like, oh my gosh, that's how I want to practice. So they were kind of hanging out, and then she found out about the home birth community. And so while she was pregnant with me, she was doing a home birth apprenticeship, which is how you did it back in the 80s, which is pretty cool. And then, so that was, then she just was a home birth midwife. I mean, she worked at the Royal Hospital for Women her whole career, as well as offering home birth to, how on earth she did it with 4 kids, I have no idea, but worked in the hospital part-time and then did home birth on the side. So the first birth that I went to, I was 6. It was my best friend's little brother was being born, and we all just kind of sat back on a couch. There was me, her little sister. We were all eating ice blocks. It was in January. We would just watched her little brother be born in the parents' bedroom. It was pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, so occasionally, I'd go along to antenatal appointments, postnatal appointments with Mum. I did attend, when I was a little bit older, I did attend a few births with her if they had other kind of older kids that maybe needed helping with. And then, but I'd never really considered doing midwifery until I was working in fashion and cafes, and then I met my current partner, and he said, why are you working in fashion? You should maybe try something else. And in so many words. And then I just had this light bulb moment. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to do midwifery. How have I never thought about this before? Yeah. And then, so I applied for MIDI at UTS, but the ATAR, or UAI back then, was like 97, so I didn't get in. So I did my doula training at the Australian College of Doulas, and Australian Doula College, I should say, and that was awesome. That was amazing. Yeah. I went to a home birth with Mum. I attended a cesarean a planned cesarean for primip, and that's terrible. I think I've just forgotten the other one. I must have done
baby brain. It's anyway. So fair.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And then, so then the following year I applied for MIDI again and nursing. Didn't get into MIDI, got into nursing, did nursing, did my new grad nursing, did my post-grad, my graduate diploma of midwifery. So that was 2016 at the Royal Hospital for Women, and then worked in MGP over there. So that was absolutely amazing. and then had my own babies, and then went to Northern Beaches, worked in their birth unit for a year, went back to the Royal, worked in their MAPS program, had another baby, then back at Northern Beaches, now just at Northern Beaches.
Love it. Love it. What a beautiful journey. So cool. And I
Long.
feel like having had experience like as, working as a doula, and then coming into midwifery with
Oh,
that
my
under your
sister's
belt.
birth. Sorry. My
Oh,
sister's
did you
birth.
attend your sister's birth?
Oh my God. I was trying to think of what hospital I was in, but no, yes, I support during my doula year. I was supporting my sister.
Wow,
Yeah,
that is absolutely
yeah, that was nice.
beautiful.
I was having a home birth. Yeah.
Wow. And was your mum there as well? Was your
Yes.
mum?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, how special is that?
Yeah. Very
Wow.
amazing. Very
Oh,
cool.
so cool.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I was saying like how amazing coming into midwifery, having been a doula. Like, do you feel like that makes it, do you think that that's benefited you now and how you work with doulas, like having kind of experienced both roles?
Yeah. Absolutely. Definitely. I mean, I think just coming from, obviously my childhood had a massive impact on it.
Yeah,
And coming with that doula lens of like, this is a normal physiological event in a woman's life,
yeah,
rather than, I think it can be quite tricky going from nursing to midwifery, because you're going from a medical pathological
yeah.
mindset to then need to completely switch to the other way. So being able to
Mm,
switch that part of your brain off can be quite difficult. I mean, I'm lucky that I basically only did nursing to do midwifery. So I was like,
yeah.
ugh, diabetic foot ulcers, that's not for me. Um, but yeah, I think it can be, even like just often you'll like, it takes quite a bit for your language to change. So not referring to a woman as a patient, she's
Yeah,
the woman or the client,
yeah,
not, not the patient. I think that's a really important thing to keep in the back of your mind as a woman, is like, how does your care provider, what do they refer to you as?
yeah,
Are you their patient? Are you their sick person who needs managing, or are you a well
mm.
woman who just needs support to be able to go through whatever it is that she's going through?
I'm so glad you mentioned this because it's actually something that's been on my mind a lot lately. Like,
Mm.
yeah, I feel like it really can be quite telling, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
for sure. But also
yeah,
how, like, the woman's own perception of her experience of pregnancy. Does
yeah,
she feel like a patient? you know,
yeah,
or yeah, what's her own philosophy is something I think important to acknowledge.
yeah, yeah, it's huge. Um, so should we unpack a little bit the roles of doulas and the roles of midwives and how they are different from one another and kind of why, yeah, one does not replace the other and like you need both. They
Mm.
both play a different important role.
Yeah, yeah. So I think doulas can't offer medical advice or do any clinical assessments, but they're amazing at emotional and physical support for both the woman and the partner, and they're really good at kind of providing information. They can refer to research and all that kind of stuff just to help the woman in her own decision making. And then the midwife has obviously clinical codes of ethics and all that kind of stuff that we need to be really bound by, that we need to
Mm,
follow. And obviously, yeah, we do lots of training every year doing emergency skills and drills and all that kind of stuff for managing obstetric emergencies,
yeah.
which we're really good at. And then we consult and refer to obstetricians or endocrinologists or hematologists or whatever it is that we need, or that the woman may need if things are kind of veering off the path of normal. So I think, yeah, having a birth team that is, kind of holistic and covering all those bases is really important. And I mean, obviously midwives offer emotional and physical support as well, but
Yeah.
particularly in hospital when you're needing to be, filling in the team leader, documenting, checking baby's heart rate, monitoring all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and looking after
Definitely.
other mums at the same time too.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, hopefully not, but yeah, definitely. That, it really detracts from the care that we would much prefer to be doing.
Yeah. I think because doulas and midwives have such different roles that complement one another so beautifully, I think when a woman has a doula and a midwife, it's just the dream. And like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's not only my opinion. Like, there's a lot of research that shows that that's really ideal for women, and that results in really great birth outcomes. So it's an evidence-based thing to have both. And
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
always really love highlighting, I guess, the differences. Like, your midwife is there to focus on the sort of clinical overall safety of you and your baby, and your doula is there to advocate for you, to provide that support, to make sure that you are, I guess, making your decisions with confidence, and that you're feeling really empowered in the decisions that you're making. And your midwife, I'm sure midwives would love to be doing hip squeezes for 24 hours straight. But it's like, you guys, exactly what you said, Abby, like, you guys are doing paperwork, and you're checking baby's heart rate, and you're doing blood pressure, and you're doing, there's so many clinical tasks that are happening in the background that you're just limited, like, and so having both is just one of the best possible ways to set yourself up for success in birth. And
Absolutely.
that's what the research shows. And then I think too, like, having a doula and a midwife, and then when you add in getting really good information too throughout your pregnancy, and you're really well informed, you're coming into birth well prepared, well educated, it's just the most beautiful recipe for success. Not that success needs to look any particular way, or everyone has a different definition of success. I think the way that I define success in birth is like, did you have a great experience? Did you walk out of it feeling empowered? Whether or not that was, a water birth, or maybe you wanted an epidural, or whatever it might look like for you.
Yeah. I mean, even, some births can tick every single box for what you would expect birth trauma to come from. And it can be an incredibly empowering experience. And then some, it could be a water birth. And then you would think like, oh, surely that would have been a positive experience. And depending on it is, how the woman feels during it, and what her recovery is like, and everything. Like, it's such a subjective thing. There's no, only the woman can be the one to say whether it was a positive experience or not.
Yeah, it's so true. And I love what you were saying about it's not necessarily, forceps or cesareans or those things that cause birth trauma. Like, the birth trauma inquiry literally shows that it's so much more about how the woman is made to feel, and how well supported she is, and whether or not she was respected and empowered and given all of her options. Like, those are the things that tend to impact whether or not the woman walks away traumatized or super empowered.
Exactly. And I think it's also important to note that even if the woman has chosen private obstetrics, that a doula is almost more necessary because I think often women, when they have private obstetrics, they're like, oh, well, I've got my private obstetrician, so they're going to be there the whole time. But I don't think they realise that the whole labour they're actually going to be cared for by whoever the birthing unit midwife is that's on duty. Yes. And so that continuity is just as important when you've got a private obstetrician.
It's so true. Like, you're really vulnerable if you rock up in labour, and you're just going to be kind of assigned whoever is available during that shift. Like, you don't know that person has the same philosophy as you, and that person doesn't necessarily know you intimately. They don't really understand your preferences. They don't know the little nuances, that you have and that you bring. It's such an important thing to call out. And I also think that one of the reasons that women sometimes don't hire a doula if they have an obstetrician is because they I don't know, like I recently had a client, this example just popped into mind. She was really hoping for a natural birth, but had hired an obstetrician and chosen to give birth in a private hospital before she kind of realized that statistically that was going to have a not so helpful impact on her odds of having that birth that she really hoped for. And so for a good few months, she was like, oh, well, I've already almost like chosen the wrong model of care, if you want to call it wrong. Like there's obviously no right or wrong, but I guess she saw the statistics and was like, oh gosh, like probably if I really wanted this water birth, I should have birthed in a very different model of care. And now I've like set myself up for, you know, for that to not be very likely to happen. And so she thought, oh, I've already set myself up for it to not happen. I may as well not hire a doula. But then I think she spoke to someone who was like, no, exactly what you've just said, Abby. Like, if anything, this means you need a doula a lot more. And so then she contacted me and was like, am I too late? Should I get a doula? And I was like, you absolutely should. Like, yes, that, you know, you need a doula more, not less. And she went on to have the most beautiful, like, dream birth, everything she hoped for. And I think it's so cool to call that out. And even like, I think too, a lot of women might think that they don't need a doula anymore, or that it's not worth investing in a doula if they run into some kind of complication in their pregnancy. You know, like I have heard stories of women finding out like, oh, I have preeclampsia, or, you know, there's some complication that comes up where it's like, you know, this is no longer a normal pregnancy and there is now an element of clinical risk that is attached to this. And so they think like, oh, okay, well, I'm not going to have my natural water birth anymore, so what's the point hiring a doula? But like, I honestly think that those women, everyone needs a doula, but those women need a doula so much more because you're going to have to advocate for yourself more. You need more information and more support navigating your options. Like, yeah, I think the more complex things get, the more you need a doula. Like,
yeah, for sure. It's just, I mean, and it's not even just about the birth. Like the postpartum care is just so beneficial as well.
Yeah, it's so true. Because as we said, there's life after birth. I feel like it could be really cool to share some of our top tips as mamas that have given birth before, and then obviously like having the experience that we have supporting women through their births and their postpartum. If you had to give someone listening who is preparing for birth, like, I don't know, 3 or however many tips, like what would your top 3 nuggets of golden wisdom be?
I would say choose your birth team wisely.
Yeah.
Choose your birth location wisely.
Yeah.
And have enough information that you feel prepared, but having the capacity to surrender to whatever the experience is. You can't control it. You know, you can't control your children. And this is that.
Yeah.
You know, for some women it's conception. For some women it can be a really difficult pregnancy. For a lot of women it's the birth. For some women it's breastfeeding. For a lot of women it's breastfeeding. And these are all experiences that are teaching us or showing us or making us, you know, surrendering to the experience, because we cannot control birth no matter how hard we try. And it's showing us that, you know, once your baby's in your arms, you can't make it sleep if it's not tired, and you can't make it eat if it's not hungry.
Yeah.
You know, we need to relinquish the control and surrender to the experience.
Oh, it's such good advice. I can't agree more. And I feel like it's that advice that you gave is so well balanced, because you touched on like being really intentional and really mindful of your place of birth and your model of care, you know, choosing those things really carefully so that you do have the best possible chance. You know, like I think it's this beautiful and delicate balance of controlling the things that you can control, like what you touched on around like your birth team and those things, and then letting go of control for the things that we can't control. You know, we don't know how long the labor is going to be. We don't know when the labor will happen. We don't know. There's so many factors. So, yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's beautiful advice. So important. I feel like if I had to give 3 pieces of advice, the model of care one would have been one of them. So I'm going to try and think of a different 3. I think being mindful of where you're getting your birth education from would be really important. And also just it's funny when we had our first baby, I'll never forget my dad saying to me, it was so beautiful. He was like, "And my advice is that you take no one's advice." And I thought that was so cute. Like, he was like, "You are going to know that baby. You know your body. You know what, like, you just have to follow your instincts. So don't take advice." Like, and it's
Yeah.
so true. Like, I don't know, even there can be so much unhelpful advice that very well-meaning people give you, you know, whether it's friends or family members. I feel like so many of my clients tell me, you know, the second they tell their friends and family that they're having a home birth, like, people start making comments like, "Oh, that's so dangerous. Why would you put your baby on the line?" And it's like, you have to be so careful what you do and don't take on, because uneducated people that
Mm,
have no idea about birth are very often the loudest people when it comes to birth,
yeah.
and they will tell
I
you
know, it's amazing.
all of their 2 cents that are not based on any evidence whatsoever, you know, and the
Hmm.
peanut gallery can be very loud and very uninformed. So I feel like being
Yeah.
specific and mindful about where you're getting your information from is so
Yeah.
huge. And I would even like, just to even give another shout out to birth circle classes that you do. Like, I always encourage my clients to get their birth education from outside the hospital system, which may sound like a little
Mm,
bit of a controversial thing to say, but I, hand on heart, I believe it, because I do think
yeah.
that sometimes, you know, and not all the time, I can't say that I've attended every single hospital birth education course ever, like, I certainly haven't, but generally, I find that sometimes the hospital education can be a little bit more focused on, like, these are our policies, you know, more
Mm,
so than teaching the women how to navigate labor and the different stages of labor and what to expect and how to optimize labor. And I don't know, I think
mm.
sometimes women leave those hospital classes not super equipped for what's coming and more just conditioned to, like, be good girls.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like that would be a big one of my advice, of just, like, being
Yeah.
careful where you get your information.
Yeah.
Even to touch on partners too, like, making sure that your partner is really ready. You know, you want your partner to go into it really confident and really well equipped,
Mm,
and that's something that I think is another misconception that a lot of people assume with doulas. Like, they're like, "Oh, but, you know, my partner doesn't want to be replaced by the doula." And
yes.
I am so big on making sure that, like, the partner's actually a better support and is more involved than they otherwise would have been,
Well, that's
because
it
I'm there.
exactly. Like, I feel like doulas like facilitate the partner's role. You know, it's such a bugbear when I'm like, "Hey, I really recommend you get a doula. I know it might seem expensive, but you know, it'll be really, really beneficial." And they're like, "Oh no, you know, it's our first time, so we really just want it to be the two of us." I'm like, "No,
Yeah.
no."
And it's like, also, it's not going to be the two of you. Like, there's going to be 16,000 midwives, 1,800 obstetricians, 14 nurses, 8 students. Like, mate, there's going to be people in the room. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Unless you're having a free
yeah,
birth, which, like, I respect
yeah,
that. If that's what you want to do, you know,
yeah,
go have a free birth in your shower. You do you. It's up to you.
yeah, yeah.
But yes, you're so right. I feel like they're like, "Oh, I just want it to be us two." I'm like, well, it's not going to be just you two.
Yeah. And I think it's also really important for the partners to be aware of their own, what do they see their role as? How do they view birth? What are their perceptions?
Mm,
You know, and I mean, obviously for the woman, that's incredibly important too. But these are
yeah.
really, yeah, they need to be feeling, you know, any fear that is brought into that room is palpable.
I think people don't quite realize actually how important it is for the partners to be really, like, addressing their fears too. Like, a lot of the time
Mm,
women will go, "Okay, you know, I've got to address my fears." But one of the activities that I do with my clients in our very first session always is talk about fears going into birth, because I think
mm,
suppressing them and trying to ignore them just means that they're going to have so much more of an impact in a negative way. Whereas if we
mm,
dive into those and we really unpack them and we really put things in place to make you feel a lot more prepared and confident, that can be really important and really helpful. And I do it
yeah.
with the mums and the partner. Like, I get them
Mm,
both to really, I've got like a little almost like a mind map of some of the kind of most common fears. And so it's
yeah.
things like, you know, something going wrong medically, or tearing, or ending up in cesarean, or
Mm,
feeling like all of your
mhm.
power was taken away from you, and the birth just happened to you and you had no options. Like, all the different fears, even like worrying about breastfeeding or worrying about postpartum depression, like all the different
Yeah.
things. There's so many things that we worry about, going into birth. And
Mm.
so I pull up this little mind map and I get both parents to kind of sit with that for a minute and look at the mind map and be like, is there anything that's jumping out at me? And is there anything that, I read that and I go, oh, actually, yeah, I am a little bit nervous about that. And I think it's so
Mm.
important, to your point, Abby, that like both people are coming into the birth and leaving fear at the door, because it's
Yeah.
true. Like it really is palpable. You can feel
Yeah.
it in the room when someone is scared, and the
Yeah.
mum can certainly feel that, and it
Yeah.
doesn't have a good impact.
Mm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Maybe
Yeah.
that's my third piece of advice is like going,
Yes.
yeah,
Process
addressing your fears.
fears prior to the day.
Yeah, it's hard to address your fears when you're having contractions
Mm.
and you're like
Yeah.
in labor land.
That's right.
I don't know if you had any other parting wisdom or final words of advice
Mm. Um.
other than come to Birth Circle.
Yeah. Yeah. Plug.
I love it. I love it. I'm a Birth Circle advocate. I am all for it.
And I'm a big Angie Doula advocate for sure. I mean, I think it's important to choose childbirth education that resonates with you
Yeah.
because, there's going to be some that want, I wouldn't say that Birth Circle is like hypnobirthing or calm birthing or anything. I think women need much more than just breathing techniques to be able to get through labor. Not to maybe sound like I was dissing hypnobirthing and calm birthing.
No,
Absolutely not,
not at
because
all.
we have amazing outcomes with both of those approaches.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think finding childbirth education that just feels like it is what you want to get out of it rather than what society tells you that you need.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I feel like because everyone's so different and everyone comes into birth with different hopes and desires and
Yeah.
ideas and beliefs, like, yeah, it's the same as you would choose, I don't know, anything that kind of
Mm.
suits you and your personality and your preferences. Because,
Yeah.
yeah, there's no one size fits all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. But if you do choose one that doesn't have anything about post-birth, then definitely do something in addition that has post-birth information, like a
Yes,
breastfeeding
absolutely.
workshop, like planning. Yeah, I mean, not that I do specific separated things. It's a one-day course, but I mean,
Yeah.
I think like Birth Circle is complementary to any other. I have had lots of people do calm birth and hypnobirthing or the hospital classes as well,
Yeah.
and the feedback has always been, oh, I'm so glad that I did both because it was just a really well-rounded, all aspects were covered, I guess.
Yeah.
Not that everyone has the time or the money for that.
No, but
Because
I totally agree. Like, if you do have the time and the money to do multiple courses, like, why not? Go and
yeah,
do the hypnobirthing or the calm birthing. Do,
mm,
like, even go and do OMP, go and do, like,
yeah,
do all of it.
yeah,
Do the birth circle
absolutely,
one, do,
yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Oh, I remember you shared it, and I'd seen it before, but that the amount of effort that people put into planning a wedding, and
Yes.
yet, you know, is like comparison to planning for having a baby is just, incomparable. And I
Yeah.
think it's so funny that, people feel comfortable asking, their friends and family to take a day off work or whatever it is to come to a wedding. And yet they don't feel comfortable to have a meal train and say, could you bring a meal to me postpartum? I just
Yeah.
think that it's such a funny mentality that we
Yes.
have. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh my
It,
gosh. And
um,
like if anything, I would argue that investing time and money and energy into your birth is more important than
oh
having a
my
big
gosh,
fancy wedding, because it's like,
totally.
mate, statistically people are not walking away from their wedding days with injuries and trauma. But like, have you read
Exactly.
the birth trauma inquiry? Like, there's a lot of women walking away from birth traumatized. So let's like try and prevent that, you know?
Not that I'm married, but I don't think you come out the other side of your wedding as a completely different person.
No, and you come out of
Maybe
your
a
wedding
different
and you
name.
go on a honeymoon, but you come out of
Yeah.
birth and you've now got a newborn that is going to keep you
Yeah.
awake at night, and like you need to
Yeah.
feed them around the clock, and you're processing your birth. Hopefully it went beautifully.
Yeah.
But even if your birth goes absolutely beautifully, like postpartum is a huge, it's like what you said about it being like a mountain that you climb, you know?
Mm. Oh,
So
I
yeah,
mean,
I agree.
yeah, because every facet of yourself is different once you're on the other side.
Yes.
I mean, in the workshop, we do talk about matrescence, how, the brain changes that we go through, but also how our relationships are different. Our
Yeah.
self-perception is different. We're physically different. We're emotionally different. Every single facet of yourself is different once you're on the
Yeah.
other side.
Yeah. It's so true. It's so true. Oh, so good, Abby. Thank you so much. That was so beautiful. Thanks for joining us for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a rating or a comment, and I can't wait to see you back here for the next one.